Hello guys, welcome to the It Tribe. I am Liz Owino. If you're new here, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. Comment down below and let me know how you're feeling about today, about this moment, about your week. If you basically work 9 to 5, you literally had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, apart from Mauritius, where I know they went back to work on Monday. That's pretty hectic, if you ask me. My week has been quite interesting. I started off on a very low note. I don't know why. If I don't start on a Monday with work, it kind of becomes very wishy-washy for me, but I was able to get myself together and get some work done. In light of what I basically did last week, I think it'll be very important to kind of get more into it, that type of thing. That's not my job. I think last week I basically started mentioning about responsibility and how as a generation we need to get to the point where we come out of survival. If you haven't watched it, click there first and then you come back. Child, I think as Gen Zs, maybe early, late, whatever it is, we are kind of detaching ourselves from community, from taking accountability or taking responsibility for the parts that we play in. There's a very individualistic mindset that we have. I think it's called the me mindset, where a person just consistently thinks of themselves. And you find that, yes, you should be selfish, but we are getting to the point where it's like borderline, like it's extreme at this point. The reason why the title is It's Not My Job is because I hear that a lot with a lot of people. There's a way that what you do impacts other people. We basically just think of how it impacts us, how the consequences basically affect us, and how our actions just affect us or me as an individual. But then we don't come out of our bubble to ask ourselves, how is what I'm doing going to affect maybe 5 people down the line? Forget about the generation or the people in your community, just even the people in your family. Forget about that. Let's just start with you as a person, because if you only think about yourself, that means the actions that you're taking and you're only thinking about you as a person without thinking of anybody else. You're not really considering your kids, how that's going to impact your kids, your kids' kids, your kids' kids, kids, kids. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like, I do what I do because I want the people that, especially for me in my family, I'm the first grandchild and the first sibling. So that means every single person that comes after me, I want to set an example to show them that, like, there's a standard that is out there that they can live up to, rather than having a mediocre line where you just do what you feel like doing without any consequences. Because I feel like right now the line is very blurred, where if you twist it or you tweak it a little, you will find a group of people that obviously agree with that. But then at the end of the day, just because everybody runs with it, that doesn't mean that it's right. Because the moral values that you have, they should be something that are kind of universally accepted. For example, in African houses, you find that there are certain things that, like maybe leaving your shoes outside, like by the door, or not walking around the house with shoes. That's like a standard rule. But then in certain houses, you'd find that someone goes, like, literally puts their leg on top of a sofa with shoes on, and they're just there like, well, and it's like, the question is, how do we as individuals contribute to the society, and how do we start taking responsibility for that particular thing? Because like I said last week, whatever it is that you do impacts another person, whether you like it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, whether it's conscious or subconscious, you're definitely affecting somebody by whatever it is you're doing. And I normally say that whatever it is you do, you need to be aware that there's somebody that's praying for that particular thing, and the solution is in your hands. So if you don't take responsibility for whatever it is you're supposed to do right now, child, you're going to be suffering. And of course, God knows how to find another person to do the job, but then you've delayed another person's blessing or another person's breakthrough in life because you are just ignorant. And I think that is what is killing us as a generation. Sometimes, right, it's not that people don't know. And that's the funniest part sometimes. It's not that people don't know. They really know what they're doing. People know what they're doing all the time. 99.9% of the time, people know why they do what they do, when they do it, how they do it. They know it. Stop trying to convince everybody. Stop trying. Like, even when it comes to relationships, I usually talk, sometimes, like I said it in the first episode where I was like, I don't walk into every relationship just because it's presented to me. I'm not thirsty to the point where I'm gonna just jump into it or run into it. I have to question, I have to vet it. And I think that's why being self-aware is really important. Like, it's not my job. It's something I've heard a lot, because the thought of accepting that I'm responsible for somebody else is heavy. You need to have a very strong backbone, and you need to be really mature for you to get to the point where you realize that, like, it's not just me that lives in this world. Because at the end of the day, you have to be a good epitome. And that's where integrity comes in. You do what is right whether somebody is watching or not. If you throw integrity under the carpet, or you basically just step on it and you decide that I'm not going to be an integral person, I don't see how that benefits any single person, because it doesn't benefit you, because you will never live up to your word. I normally say, if a person shows up to the world faulty, it means they're also faulty within themselves. Like, people treat you how they treat themselves. That's how I see it. And if you're unable to take responsibility for another person outside of you, that means there's certain aspects in your life that you don't take responsibility for. I'm having hibiscus tea. It's kind of amazing, I'm not gonna lie. Quite nice. The reason why people find it very difficult to take responsibility these days is because the chances of you seeing the consequences of what you do are very minimal. For example, sexual interactions with people. I was watching a video a couple of weeks ago with my cousin, and they were basically talking about how in Nairobi especially, there were people sending in their confessions. And when I tell you that video, it was very insightful. But then what they were saying, it's really sad to find out that, like, almost 50% of kids in high school are actively having sex. And when you hear something like that, from my perspective, I see that there is a gap in the society, or there is misinformation in the society, and that is why things like this are happening. Because back then, sex was not something that people were proud of, and what they were basically saying in that particular video is not something that anybody should actually be proud of saying, because there were even some people that were very happy about the fact that they spread STIs and stuff like that. That's why I tell people, and that's why I do these videos. If I can speak these words out, if I can get it out for people to see that, like, that's not the only way to live life. I know that's the loudest way to live your life, but that's not the only way. Because people pretend they don't like a lot of people, but whole time they really be wanting to be like them. But at the same time, you also have to understand that if you want to be good, you have to choose to be good, and you have to choose what is good for you. And it's a very intentional decision, because 50%, like 50%, that's a lot. That means 50% of kids in school have actually accepted, and they've decided that's what they're gonna do. It really breaks my heart, because the music that comes out influences that. Fashion that comes out, because I was watching I think a documentary or a show or an interview, I'm not really sure, where someone was saying some of these fashion designers, when they're trying to make a product or when they're trying to sell or market something, the main motivation sometimes is sex. They're trying to sell the emotion of sex to the person so you can be lured to buy it. And when you think about it from, like, the core aspect of that, it's like what they're selling, what social media is pushing sometimes, what musicians are basically pushing sometimes, they get into our minds, and we don't really take the time to really vet, like, is this what I want to do? Am I this type of person? Because you can shake your ass or whine all you want, but at the end of the day, that leads to something. You can't just always be doing the same thing and not expect the same result. So the question is, what is something different that you're going to do to get a different result? And I think sometimes showing people that there are many ways to live your life. Another way that I'd give more clarity on this matter is, there's something Jordan Peterson said: we don't experience the consequences of our actions simply because there are protective measures that have been set up for us not to feel bad about ourselves. People mostly think of sex in relation to pregnancy, right? Not sex in relation to HIV or STIs.
I wonder how this conversation got to just say, maybe it's because of that video. I don't know. This wasn't where I was supposed to go.
I think just the understanding that HIV still exists, different STIs still exist, and the people that are out there, they don't care about you. For example, maybe pregnancy. There's morning after pills, and there's different ways that people can prevent pregnancy. But does it make sense for you to prevent pregnancy and then get an STI? Some of them can't be treated, so that means you have to live the rest of your life with it. HIV is even worse, because your whole life literally changes once you contract HIV. So I want to really close this chapter. I might really delve into it because I've done a lot of research about this particular topic. Maybe I'll speak about it like in another episode completely differently. But what I want to say is, especially with the example that I've given, which is sex, is it goes back to the same word that I said, ignorance. We know all of these things, but we choose to cloud ourselves, or we choose to create a narrative around this particular thing where it makes it easy for us to stomach our decisions or justify why we do what we do. And granted, everyone can do what they want to do, but at the end of the day, you also have to understand that every single action always has an outcome. It may be positive or it may be negative, and especially if it's negative, best believe you're gonna get the consequences of your actions. Just because there are different ways that you can prevent it. Like maybe let's say even in the case of drugs, yes, you can give examples like Snoop Dogg has been smoking for years and he's still alive and he still works and everything. You don't live with him. You don't know what he experiences or doesn't experience. You see what he wants you to see, but you don't know how he lives his life 24/7. To conclude this episode, this was kind of heavy though, making sure that we are able to take responsibility for everything that we do, and also take responsibility and realize that we are the next generation. I got distracted by a cat. And making sure that we understand the role that we play as the next generation is really important. And if you're gonna be a person in a very prominent position in society, you might as well start now. Doesn't matter if you're 15, doesn't matter if you're 12, doesn't matter if you're 18, doesn't matter if you're 27. You can wake up tomorrow and decide to be the person that you're meant to be. That's just basically what I'm trying to say. That it's not my job type of mentality or me mindset, I don't think it really helps anybody. One, you end up lonely. Two, I don't think that's a good thing to be, especially in a time like now, where the rates of loneliness are getting more and more and more. Some people may listen to this episode and think, okay, how do I get myself out of this? Or how do I make myself better? Or like, I really want to change, but I don't know how. One advice is by saying, send a message to the It Tribe and I will definitely get back to you. That's one way. If you're not comfortable with me, find somebody that you can be transparent with and vulnerable with, and a person that you know has basically gone through the steps and been through the process to get to where you want to get to. Kind of like a mentor, but it doesn't really have to be a mentor. You just need a person that is the right example for someone to look up to. I'm usually very open when it comes to really helping people because I know where I was and I know how hard it was to get myself out of that particular space. I hope this episode was insightful. I hope that you finish listening to this episode and you see that it is your job to actually make a difference in this world. It is your job to be a good example to other kids in the society or to other people in your community. There's always areas of improvement that we can basically push forward for other people to see. Sometimes I say we look at people suffer and we don't care simply because they haven't asked for the help. But sometimes it's like you need to see it and you need to take the responsibility of asking a person, how are you doing? Like really, how are you doing? I hope this video helps somebody. Send it to somebody that you know needs this video, and tell a friend to listen to the It Tribe podcast. I hope you have a lovely, lovely, lovely week. I'll see you guys next week. Like, comment, and subscribe. Ciao.